Today we're going to start working with our clay to make our clay bird. I'm going to warm up my clay a little bit and pull it into half. So I have half for the body of my bird and the other half for things like wings or any other details that I might want. Now for the body of my bird, I chose blue. You can choose any color that you want. And the way that we're going to change our clay the color that we need if we're using white clay is just by poking our marker over and over and over and over again into that clay. I'm going to pick it up and start mixing that marker in. Now, since my clay started as white, this color is not going to be super dark or super bright, but I can change it. If I wanted it to be a little darker, I could spread it out and do it again. After we get to the color that we want, we are going to start to shape our bird. Now we're going to be using the pinch technique. That does not mean that we're making a pinch pot. It just means that we're kind of pressing gently until we get our bird into the shape that we want it to be in. I might actually start by rolling it into a really fat coil so it looks like a peanut. Then I'm going to pinch so that I can see the difference between my bird's head and my bird's body. I can also pinch out a tail. Now, in this example, I start pinching out wings and then I say, nope, I don't like that. I'm going to roll it up and I'm going to try again. And I think I decided that I'm going to add wings separately using a slab. So I'm going to pinch out his little beak and pinch out his head. Pinch out his tail, and that is what I'm going to keep. Now, as I'm pinching out these parts of my bird, I do not want to pinch them too thin. If it's floppy, if it's not holding its shape, you have pinched it out too thin, and you need to squish it together and try again. Now, this next piece that I'm doing, I'm going to add some color to make my bird's wings. Now I can make my bird's wings the same color as my bird, but I'm going to try to add even a little bit more blue to make them show up just a little bit darker than the rest of his body. Again, once I get that color that I want, I'm going to start pinching those wings into the shape that I want them to be. Oh, it looks like I chose to add in a little purple to kind of make more of an indigo color for my wings. Now I'm going to separate that piece of clay into two separate pieces and roll them into kind of ovally balls to start my wings off. I'll squish them a little flatter and pinch out those pointy edges. I do not need to squish them as flat as I want them to be on my bird, because when I press them onto my bird, they're going to flatten out automatically. Now, if we were working with real clay from the earth, we would have to do something called score and slip, which means that we scratch at the clay and we add some wet clay to make sure that our pieces stick. But our model magic works a little differently, so as long as we press them together firmly, they should stick. The last thing I'm going to model out of my clay are 3 little eggs to go in my bird's nest. Now, we may have done this ahead of time, but if not, we're going to go ahead and model those 3 little eggs, and I'm going to have them all stuck together, so there's not so many pieces I have to keep track of. Now my bird and my eggs have to dry before I can add any other details that I might want on them in Sharpie. So we will probably set those aside for a week. If we have time on this day, or again, we may have done this ahead of time, we are going to make our crumpled paper nest. So you're going to start with a brown or tan piece of paper and just start crumpling around the edges in a ring. It's going to take a lot of crumpling. That paper is going to keep wanting to kind of spread out and get bigger, and you're going to just keep crumpling around and around in a circle, almost like you're making a pinch pot out of paper. Crumple, crumple, crumple. As we crumple, if it's still not staying, we might use a little tape or a little staple to keep it together. I'm going to write my name on the bottom of my nest and put everything that needs to dry into my nest. My eggs are going to go towards the bottom so they're not touching my bird, and my bird can rest on the top to dry to add more decorations to next week. Once my clay is dry, I can start adding decorations. As you can see here, I'm kind of touching up my nest to make sure it stays together. But then I'm going to get out the black Sharpie and also maybe some colorful Sharpies to add any kinds of details that I want to my bird. Maybe adding a detail to show where his beak is and filling that into a color, giving him matching eyes on either sides of his head, and then adding whatever designs and textures I want. I need to make sure that when I'm working with the Sharpie on my bird, that I am not poking into the clay. That is not good for my clay. That is not good for my Sharpie. You are not using your Sharpie to poke or make texture. You are just using your Sharpie to add colors and designs. So you should be pressing gently, almost like you are using a paintbrush. You can keep going until you get all the designs you want. We are going to put your name on the very bottom of your bird in case he flies out of the nest. We don't want him to get lost. And then you will arrange all your pieces together in the nest for your final piece.